Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. This is Robert.
This is Wayne.
And this is Mike, and we're here with episode 3 of the Freethinkers of Clarksville.
Let's get it.
All right. So, for those who are joining us for the first time, or for those who forgot from the last episode, Mike, could you tell us what does it mean to us to be a free thinker?
I'd be glad to. To be a free thinker is to take time to evaluate the arguments that people make on their own merit. Now, maybe you don't like the person that's giving you the argument. Maybe you don't like the topic that you're discussing. Right. But you ignore all that and you just take their argument at its value and judge it on its own merit.
And this is the Freethinkers of Clarksville. What does it mean to be of Clarksville?
Of Clarksville means to take locally sourced articles or topics that are being discussed in our community, find those comments or arguments that are being made underneath the articles, and formulate them on this show, and take a position and have an alternate position, almost the devil's advocate position,
right, against
it, and put it through the paces.
Okay. And Robert, my understanding, you've got a story to kick us off?
Sure. In a Clarksville Now article recently, I noticed that LG Electronics is about to add 300 jobs here in Clarksville, which is good. That's good. We want our manufacturing producers to continue to expand their operations here, offering more jobs and more opportunities for our local economy to grow. Mm-hmm. Now, underneath that article, the most relevant comment with 9 likes came from an individual that said, "Great news if people actually wanted to work."
Okay.
Gotcha.
So,
do you want me to lead in with the question?
Well, who are you going to kick this one to start us off?
Well, here's what my comment leans to. Okay.
Right.
So progress in manufacturing jobs and jobs in general are not being taken, right, from this comment.
Right.
Because the government is injecting stimulus and unemployment benefits that keep workers at home living off wages they did not earn. In contrast, the reason businesses are seeing potential to open more jobs is possibly due to the influx of stimulus money. I think we can all agree to that, right?
Perhaps.
The more money to be spent that's being spent, the more businesses think, oh, there's money to be had. We need to open operations so we can get some more of that money.
Hire some more folks. Yeah.
So I conflate it to a bubble. So is this bubble going to burst, right? Will jobs collapse when the stimulus runs out? So is it better to survive on the government funds rather than be terminated if that bubble bursts? So is it better for people to continue to move that money into the economy, or is it better for them to take a job and then once that stimulus money runs out and people don't have the capacity to buy the things and these manufacturing firms start to lay off en masse because that money's not there, what's the better argument? Wayne, what do you think?
So if I understand this person's comment right, they're saying, look, all this is great if people actually want to work. The concern, I would assume from them, would be something along these lines. If in fact, the manufacturing jobs are being created not because we actually have a demand for more of whatever product is going to be produced, but an artificial demand created by the government by force, either by taking money from some people who produce something and giving it to others, or by simply borrowing the money and creating artificial demand. That kind of artificial demand created by government, we would worry could only be sustained if the government either keeps taking money from other people to give it to their preferred industry, or keeps borrowing indefinitely. Neither of which, the first of which is just simple tax and spend. You're taking from one segment of the economy to give to another to create demand where people didn't really want it in the first place, or borrowing indefinitely, which works right up until somebody stops lending you money. I can see the concern with that are these jobs the product of actual business demand, or is it just the government messing with folks? I can see where that might be coming from.
So you would say that if in this instance, right, should be people be taking these jobs if they're open, and regardless of their stimulus and regardless of the unemployment benefits that might make you not able to work,
Right.
the opportunity is there. You should make sure to invest in the long haul, which is to take the job.
Well, if I understand their comment right, they might also be thinking this: if you're, if you're on unemployment, which they passed all these extra benefits to provide increased unemployment benefits throughout the last year, in addition to the stimuluses. Why work when you can get money for free?
Sure,
that's a good point. Why not just stay home, take the free money, and especially if the job you're thinking of applying for, you're worried might not be there in another year or two in the first place, and you're right back where you started. It is hard to motivate people to work if it's just the same amount of money, but now you have to work for it.
Mike, is there an alternate argument to that?
Well, I would have to push back and say that in general, people want to work.
Sure.
They're willing to take the jobs that are available. They just may not be qualified, or they may not have the resources needed to get there to take to regular jobs. We can look at around. We have several job markets available here in town. They're growing, and so we have a low percentage of unemployment. But so for someone to say that if people want to work, I think is being a little bit disingenuous, because there are few, if any, people who have the ability that aren't willing to work. Now, I could see where they're coming from by saying this, people don't want to work, because no one wants to work, especially if you're not able to pick the type of job that's available.
Maybe they don't want that particular job at that particular pay.
Exactly.
Right.
So they might, to say that they don't want to work is, you can take it two ways. They don't want to work at all, which I don't think is the case. I think it's clearly that if people are given an opportunity to work that they can do successfully, can get paid for, people are willing to do that. Now, if you say they don't want to work and take just any job that's available just because it's available, I think you might be able to support that argument, but I don't think that was the intent of the comment. Is more that jobs are available, people aren't willing to work because they just don't want to work. They just want to sit back and take the government money. Everyone knows that the money coming from the government is not permanent. It's a temporary solution, temporary fix. It's run out before. It's going to run out again. So anyone who's preparing for the future, which is going to be most everybody, is going to be willing to work in a job that's available to them. So they may not take the first job that comes up because they're able to fall back on that unemployment benefits that they had or whatever benefits they have, but they are looking, and when a job comes up they're able to do successfully, they will take it.
That's a very interesting point of view.
Okay.
Do you either of you think that my push of that argument is that there's an artificial demand being implicated by these, there's a lot of people that receive stimulus even in the less, couples less than 150,000. So if me and my wife both make enough money at $149,999 and we have 3 kids, we received a hefty stimulus package that all of our bases are covered, but it might be a good time to buy that new LG washer and dryer because that money's there. But if it wouldn't have changed my mind in the normal scheme of things, where people tend to save and then wait for things to break before they buy something, or they try to lengthen the life of what they have, right? But if you have an influx of cash now, the demand is artificial.
If I were to support that idea, I would say this. There are economic theories about government stimulus and how it can benefit the economy. And I would say the most practical way you could defend something like that is, let's say we issue a government stimulus, right? And I take my stimulus and I go buy and I go do something which I would not ordinarily have done, say buy a PlayStation 5,
Sure.
right? Or a VR headset.
Good
right?
luck.
Yeah, good luck getting those. But let's say that I did. I wouldn't ordinarily have done it, but for the government handing me some free money, I might not have tried it. It's like getting a coupon to go to a restaurant you've never tried.
Sure.
The theory is that if you go to that restaurant with that coupon, that it's going to all of a sudden stimulate demand. That the next time I get hungry, I'm going to go to that restaurant. That if I buy the PlayStation 5 with the government handout now, next year I might buy the PlayStation 6 with my own money. So in that sense, they're stimulating a section of the economy by creating some artificial demand now, which will lead to real demand later.
Sure.
All right. I guess my final thing on that is just to piggyback off what you're saying is companies, though, that stay in for the long haul, I don't think would make an argument or make a decision to open up a business here falling on the government stimuluses that people are getting. That's a short-term.
Well,
That's a short-term thing. So you might have individual, like small local businesses opening up, taking advantage of that while it lasts, and then going away. But you wouldn't have a company like LG, which would move in there, spend who knows how much money on a facility, and then offer to do based on that money.
But what they would be doing is forecasting, right? And that's the thing. Like LG is going to know that in the lifespan of their products, there's a specific date range that things get replaced. So if there's a new range that's being created by this influx of artificial cash and demand, they have to proceed to change all their date range forecastings, because now it's happening in real time. So if they don't get that money out.
That's a fair point.
Sure. Well,
Interesting comment.
yeah, Clarksville, please comment below. Let us know what you think. And we'll move it over to Wayne.
Well, guys, I was free thinking in the Clarksville chat on Facebook today, and ran across.
That'll get you in trouble.
Yeah, ran across a post that I thought
Might
was
be
interesting.
illegal.
This is what we used to call a meme. It's an image with some text over it.
Sure.
And it said this. Once upon a it has a, for those of you who are just listening, has a nice picture of a classic family man in a suit, waving goodbye to his wife and kid, getting into his nice little car, whole black and white photo. Once upon a time, it says, in the 50s, a family could own a home, a car, and send their kids to college, all on one income. And the comment by the Clarksville chatter, what did happen to this? Why has it changed? They asked. Well, somebody in the comments offered an explanation. This commenter said, the labor pool doubled, halving wages. Wages looked comparable due to inflation, but the value of labor decreased due to the surge in labor. Feminism was funded by corporations looking to lower the cost of labor. Basically, he's saying, well, since the 50s, if I understand their comment right, all those women that were staying at home, tending to the house, taking care of kids and such, while the man went off and earned a living, they went off to work too, and the company's like, well, shoot, now we got two workers for the price of one coming to our factory or our farm or whatever that is they're doing. Mike, what do you think of this comment? It's a good one, isn't it? Right? Double the labor force.
Mull it around a
cuts
little
wages.
there, Mike.
So, as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of capitalism.
Right.
So, anything that can be done to lower wage costs
Right.
are should be done, right?
Twice as many workers for the price as one.
Yeah.
So, now, I wouldn't have thought to do it, but I
Right.
could see how you have some corporations sitting all in, they get their smart people together,
Yeah.
and they're like, how can we decrease the cost of labor. And they said, well, just double the labor force. Well, how can we do that? We have all the men that are in the country working right now.
Right.
So then you have this nice little shy person over in the corner and says, we can use the women. and so then they do it. And then that's genius. They double it up.
And my understanding is that this economic theory, it dovetailed with World War II, right?
Absolutely.
They send all the men off to war. Who's gonna run the factories? Who's gonna work the farms and stuff? They had all these women enter the workforce, and when all the soldiers come back, all of a sudden you got a doubling of the workforce.
So
the women didn't leave the jobs.
Basically, you had a forced experiment. Can this work?
Right.
Found out that women are equally as capable
They
as
can
men.
they can work a factory job.
So all that said women couldn't work factory jobs, women couldn't work the same jobs as men, all that went out of the way. People, like the laymen still believed it, but the corporations, the people who make the rules, make the money, they knew better. But so they wanted to help other people come to see their side, and so they instituted feminism.
Rosie the
Seems
Riveter,
completely legitimate.
Rosie the Riveter says, "Well, I can do rivets, but maybe I could also be a lawyer, a doctor, or a CEO." And all of a sudden,
Sky's the limit.
You got twice the labor. Corporations sitting back, companies saying, "Well, shoot, I got twice the workforce. Let's, and could that have played a factor in the lower wages? Why
it's
is
hard.
it harder to live off? It is hard to live off a single income now, I suppose.
It is hard.
Raise a family,
and it is certainly true that it's hard to argue with the fact that there are double the amount of people able to work than when you include women. I mean, that's just plain fact.
Robert, do you really think that feminism and the entry of women into the workforce really explains why it's more difficult, if it even is, to raise a family, have a car, have a house, send your kids to college on a single income?
No.
For those that might disagree, say, well, that's not really the explanation.
Sure, it's not. I mean, I don't. Okay.
What else
All
might be
right.
going
There's
on?
a lot to unpack here. I'm not. The comment is kind of. Number one, let's address the meme. Okay, let's just address the meme.
Right.
Just because you show me a picture of a man waving to his wife
Leave It
and
to
daughter
Beaver.
leave it to Beaver, does not mean that there weren't systemic problems in that household.
Maybe not everybody in the 50s really was living that Leave It to Beaver lifestyle.
Okay, yeah, we know that. I mean, air conditioning, come on. I mean, that makes life, lack of air conditioning made life probably miserable for most people.
Right.
But to say that feminism was a capitalistic scheme to drive, labor down or costs of labor down does not pan out, because we don't see women typically running into manufacturing jobs. Maybe during the war, yes.
They really pushed it.
They really pushed it, but that's, people have, we always hold women in high regard because they're our bearers of life. We don't want them working around heavy machinery all the time.
Right.
We would think as a society, not just we as men, we as a society don't want women losing arms. Men are completely dispensable in those regards. I mean, we know that for a fact. I mean, that's why you
send the men off to war.
Yeah, we send them off to war. They do high risk power line jobs. They're on sea boats all the time, pulling crazy, deadliest catch out of the stuff. But I think the funny comment about that is that if there's any reason for women to promote themselves in the workforce, that it's going to have to come from their ability to serve their nation as people and not just serve a capitalistic scheme to lower the reduction of labor costs. But we know that that's not the case, because labor costs are reduced end over end by mechanics, industrial revolutions. I mean,
replace women with robots.
Yes, replace everyone with robots. Robots are where how you reduce labor. And then you have people sitting at home looking for a check. But I mean, it's not this. I think the comment is a bit flawed.
My understanding, I learned a little in college and in law school about the history of labor in the U.S. and in other places too. Child labor in particular, the child labor laws, and it really, we really did get the impression that businesses said we need to put all these kids to work because the more labor you can get. Even a child that can't do as good a job as a full-grown man can still do a job.
Yeah, there's certain,
and you could pay them a lot less. And so you'd have little boys, sitting there sorting gravel out of coal and such, and they did a great job.
I think that argument right there supports the commenter's theory, right?
Well,
if corporations were willing to hire children because of reduced costs, then it would only the next step would be to bring women into the workforce, right?
It was the adults in the labor force that wanted. It wasn't a bunch of children marching down the street saying we don't want jobs, kick us out, right? It was adults, and part of it was, well, these poor little boys, they're getting their fingers caught in the machines or whatever. But part of it was, hey, you're taking my son and me and making us both work for you. No, let my son stay home, do the child thing, pay me more.
Yeah, but in incorporating young people and all the population that has availability to produce in an economic fashion, it would wipe out any middle class perspectives. You would never be able to attain a higher level of education or a higher level standard because you wouldn't be able to devote yourself to those other things because you'd be constantly working.
Just to push back on that, who would benefit from wiping out the middle class? Corporations. So it seems
I was waiting for you to say women.
No. So it seems like that's evidence that's in support of this theory. They want to get rid of the middle class. They support feminism.
Okay.
Feminism leads to the eradication of the middle class.
All right.
That's a good comment then. It held its ground.
Certainly interesting. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I think we're going to turn it over to Mike now.
Ooh, Mike.
I'm a feminist.
Welcome back, everyone. All right, Mike, you got a story for us?
I do. So for those of us that live in Clarksville, we know that homelessness is a little bit of a problem. Not as big as in some cities, but not gone. I mean, there are definitely homeless people. It's there. There was a discussion, an article on Clarksville Now that talked about homeless in Clarksville and how expensive it can be. Not expensive just to live, but expensive in the fines and debt that you can accrue simply for being homeless.
Okay.
So homelessness, according to the article, if you get arrested and you're sent to jail, it's at least $100 a day plus court costs. Then if you fail to do that, it's going to just keep adding up if you're unable to pay. It says it adds up, and over the course of a year or so, this one individual they covered here earned $200,000 in court costs, which is beyond his capacity to pay. There's just no way they can do it.
Beyond most people's capacity to pay, I would assume.
Sure, not just for homeless people. So this article goes on, and it's really important to read. I think people should just read through it and just get an idea of the problem. But the comment section started talking about solutions, and there were a lot of interesting solutions, but one in particular I wanted to talk about because it said that the problem with homelessness in Clarksville isn't just a local problem. It stems, according to this commenter, from the nation, from the way that we handle our money as a nation.
Okay. All
right. In order to end homelessness in Clarksville, this commenter says, we need to end illegal immigration, stop giving taxpayers money to non-American citizens for food, housing, clothing, etc. It's time to focus on American citizens and help those people first. Something that, helping American citizens, something we can agree on. But they go on to say that because we're helping other countries, we're unable to help those American citizens here in Clarksville, right? Those citizens here in Clarksville that are homeless. The government, the D.C. government, needs to stop wasting money they don't have before it's too late. So the core of her question, or core of their question, I don't know if it's him or her, but the core of their comment, rather, is that they think that if we got rid of all the excess spending to non-American citizens, we would be able to refocus that money and eliminate the problems such as homelessness that we have locally, not just here in Clarksville, but I assume everywhere. Now, do you guys think that that's the case? If by eliminating spending in other countries, eliminating spending to non-American citizens, would we be able to redirect that money into ending institutions like homelessness, things like that? Robert?
Yeah. I'm gonna side with the commenter on this one. Large-scale immigration policies take a lot of oxygen out of the room. They take a lot of funding from taxpayers, from the government. They exercise a lot of legislation builds. And I think we've seen that universally through the last 4 or 5 administrations. It's been consistent that something needs to be done about the immigration policy. So I don't know if immigration directly affects homelessness in this capacity, but what it does is it's constantly a red herring. It's something that we keep focusing on, where we're not focusing on infrastructure, where we're not focusing on our homeless situation. And, I would think Clarksville is a microcosm, but if you want to see what happens when you don't pay attention to the institutions that are directly affected in your own communities, then you can go to San Francisco, you can go to LA and see what that major big cities, you can see what happens when homelessness has become a rampant problem and there's no legislative body trying to deal with it, because the button issue currently is immigration, and we just want to keep talking about immigration. So I'll say that they're right in that regard. I don't know if they're correct, and I don't see the line between immigrants coming into the nation and people becoming homeless because immigrants are here. But I agree with the comment that because we spend so much time and resources trying to solve immigration, we cast a blind eye to institutional problems that are here in America.
All right. So Wayne, Robert says he agrees with that commenter.
Well, he gave it its due.
Yeah, he gave it.
He's not expressing his personal opinion though on
of
this
course,
show.
yeah.
Because what I'm going to say may or may not have my personal
That's
opinions.
fair. So
I'll take the contrary position.
Yeah, the contrary position. Go ahead.
All right. So this commenter, if I understand the comment, basically presents this idea that we could solve homelessness if we stopped diverting resources towards fixing problems like providing housing and food and such for illegal immigrants, people in other countries, things like that, that we ought to fix our problems here at home first. I understand the sentiment that the job of say the government of Clarksville or the government of Tennessee or the government of the U.S., sort of America first idea, that we ought to tend to our own problems first, and then we can look outward and do a better job of fixing the world's problems. Why are we putting up, the children? People are sending in children from other countries and expecting us to take care of them. We're putting them up and taking care of them when we aren't even doing a good job taking care of our children here. Fair enough argument. I would say on a practical level, though, we've got a couple issues. One is people usually overestimate and vastly overestimate the amount of, say, for example, foreign aid that the United States actually sends out. And they vastly underestimate how much money, energy, and bureaucracy is being thrown at problems like homelessness, right? If you think ICE has a big budget for dealing with immigration and such, look at the budgets that we spend on things like housing and urban development, whose job it is to provide housing. Mm-hmm. And this is where I would say that this person, their solution, the problem with their solution is that they haven't really identified the real problem. The problem of homelessness is not a lack of housing, right? We didn't run out of houses because we just had too many people show up one day, right? Though we've tagged homeless as a euphemism for people people that have a certain type of lifestyle, but the homelessness is a symptom, right, of a deeper class of
Well,
problems.
and there's also a new term for that, right? I think we're actually politically incorrect in calling
Yes.
people homeless.
Do you know
now.
what the new term they're starting to
I
use?
can't remember what
People experiencing homelessness is a term I've heard started
people
to be used.
experiencing homelessness. Unhomed. I think it's
Unhomed.
unhomed is a new one.
Used to be they call them things like bums, right, or hobos. But if you use a euphemism like homeless, it makes you think that the problem is a home, right? If we just give this person a home, it's going to solve their problems. That's and say, well, we're spending all this money on taking care of poor children from South America or Mexico or whatever. No, we ought to do both if we can, right? And we ought to target we shouldn't say because we're doing good for child immigrants or handling illegal immigration that's the reason we can't take care of our homeless here. So I'd say the priorities of the comment are misplaced, some might think.
All right. Any final comments on that?
Well, I think the comment makes sense. I think it could use a little more. I'd love for that commenter to be commenting on under the show right now.
I'd love to have him on the show to ask him more detail.
Yeah, where was the real detail?
Yeah,
where were you going?
Maybe they'll reach out to us, and if you recognize your comments, hashtag us.
Yeah, we're not calling you out by name, but if you want to identify yourself, or just tell us more.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Robert, wrapping it up here. Did you hear anything interesting on today's show?
That last section we had about the immigration has made me really think about what else is in the blind eye of politics, and how do we get out of talking points and really start driving towards solving real problems. So I thought that was great.
Mike, anything stand out to you today? Did you think any new thoughts?
Well, just one thing over the last 3 episodes that we've done is I've noticed that as we drill in and as we build up these individuals' comments, that it's obvious that when they're making them shorthanded, that they have some thoughts behind there that I would like to really explore more. So I hope some of them reach out and join the conversation.
Yeah. I thinking about our conversation here today, it's interesting to me that you could take a comment like, we're not able to take care of the homeless because they're spending all this money on illegal immigrants and stuff and such. It's easy for me to have an instinctive reaction. I fit in the red category. I fit in the blue category. Therefore, I must, agree one way or the other with this person. We all stake out our claim. But you can take a statement like that and really unpack it. And as you said, there's a lot more to it. And I would be interested in hearing more from these people. You get a sentence or two online, and you don't really know what the person's arguments are. Robert, can you tell us if people want to become involved, be a part of the conversation, maybe even come in to the show? How can they do that?
Sure. So if anybody would like to go at any time and like the Freethinkers of Clarksville Facebook page, that will give you immediate access to our group. We're growing as we continue with this podcast, and we keep getting the word out. If you're in the local communities, Clarksville Now, Leaf Chronicles, Tennessean, anything that's kind of relegated to something in our local Clarksville community, and there is a topic that you think is interesting that maybe you'd want us to see kind of give it the merit here on the show, if you like the way we kind of dissect things and build them back up, hashtag FTOC will be the Freethinkers of Clarksville hashtag, where we'll try to go in and dissect those comments and see if they have any merit here. Yeah. If you want to comment during our show and say, hey, I'd like to come on and talk, or hey, I'd like to come on and observe and add my 2 cents, then by all means, just let us know. Shoot us a message. Shoot us a comment on any of our pages, and we'll get back to you.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Episode 3.